It was early in the morning as I finally relaxed. I had just made it to the top of a hill. I climbed a tree and sipped my coffee as I watched the sun rise. I was a vagabond in a sense. I wandered about the northern wastes and made money doing just about whatever paid. My goal was to make 20 grand in USD, then head back to the States. I had recently received a commission that was high paying. 15 grand, just to retrieve some photos from an abandoned military installment. It was nothing, I had already slipped past the light and severely underfunded local security force. I just had to get in and get out. A cakewalk really, especially for compiling 15,000 to my already large 10,000. As I headed down the hill I wondered what the hell the catch was. The only jobs that paid this high tended to be from lazy sheriffs or lazy mobsters. Only a few of those I denied. I had a woman down in Nevada. She was in a coma, so I came up north, the last frontier, to keep her plugged into life support and us out of debt. I had made and spent about $300,000 to do so. When I received the text from her, asking where I was, I had never felt such shame. It's been a few months, and things are okay between us. I've asked her to marry me, and an old friend offered me just $20,000 for one of his many upper-end homes. Which is why I'm here, in Whittier, Alaska, getting what is probably porno pics for some old World War II vet. I hoped that was what it was anyways. I felt like I was being watched. I was nearly down the hill when I heard a branch snap. I turned in the direction of it, drawing my revolver and shooting a tree. I had made a lot of enemies up north. When you arrest someone's boss, or the sheriff lets a gunfight you didn't start slide, people get bitchy. As the silence returned and I scanned the tree line around me, I decided I was just being paranoid. Could you blame me though? I ran my hands through my hair. Rather than accept I needed a haircut, I looked at the looming Buckner building. It had once housed a whole city, but was abandoned for unknown reasons. Perfectly set for a horror story, but for 15,000 grand I'd have gone to an island full of xenomorphs for 6 hours. I made my way in, and was grateful that I had done my research. There was 6 inches of standing water in the hall. The room I was going to was once an old man's room during his glory days, and was all the way across the only open entrance. I listened intently for any sign of life before I went further. The North was a harsh land. Any moment of relaxation could take one's life. I had personally seen it and nearly lived it multiple occasions. I changed my outfit closer to the entrance, and I walked further into the building, grateful for the rubber outfit I had with me. I also had diving gear. The man who hired me said that I may need to pass through the basement. I walked as quietly as I could so I could hear anything in there with me, but there was ultimately nothing but me and the graffiti, which ranged from cute bubble pop art to demented and horrific frescoes. I was about 30 minutes into my venture when I ran into my first wall, or rather a fallen one right in my way. I looked at my hastily scribbled map and took the left turn. The earthquakes had damaged the building. As I waded into the room and found my secondary access to the other part of the building, I hoped the living quarters were still standing. I heard loud splashing as I walked to the room that had basement access. I drew my gun and stopped. It appeared to go outside. Maybe some urban exploration guy had come through and was now leaving. When all was quiet I holstered my revolver and walked on. After some time I made it the stairwell to the basement. As I fully suited up I made sure everything I needed waterproofed was as such. My bag was waterproof, and I made sure it was properly secured. My gun would be useless underwater so I didn't need it on my side, and my map was laminated, so despite its shitty quality I could still use it. I had 45 minutes of oxygen, so this would be a get in and get out deal. I turned on my headlamp after I put on my cap and mask. I had made many dives up in colder lands, but the shock of the temperature drop on what little skin is uncovered is something you can never get used to. I looked back to the stairs I had just walked up, and checked my map. I just needed to head straight. This basement was my last hope for 15K. I needed to be able to get through here. At the very worst case, my phone was ziplocked in my waterproof bag. So I could make it a one-way trip and just call for help. I was shaking with anxiety the entire time I swam through there. Something was downright wrong here. I listened as I swam cautiously. There was something moving down here. There shouldn't have been any current, and it sounded like someone swimming. I ignored it and kept going. Lee and I needed that 15K. I needed to make up for my own failure. I clung to those thoughts as the paranoia and cold clung to me. The way through was clear. When I turned back I could have sworn I saw a light, but I turned around and ascended the steps leading out of the basement. As I took my gear off I noticed it was dead silent. On the other side of the building the ambience of the forest outside, here there was nothing. After I had taken my tanks off I looked around the room I was in. It looked like an office, a decrepit desk rotting in the standing water of the room. When I exited the room and looked around, I realized I must be lost. I checked my map again. The floor plan I had was supposed to spit me out of the basement in a large room with a staircase upstairs. My map had to have been wrong. A drunk old man had drawn it for me by memory though, so I couldn't be too mad. I listened and looked carefully, but no life was to be heard, and even stranger, you could see the white paint instead of graffiti. As I walked down the hallway, I thought I could hear muffled talking. I finagled my gun from my pack and raised it, walking cautiously. It was coming down a hall to my left. I walked down it until I saw myself at two doors. The voices were even louder. I pushed open one of the doors to see a theater. It was decently sized, and a newsreel was playing. I tried to figure out how it was running when the tape cut out. Instead of news about World War II, it now just played heavy breathing. I thought it had to be some cruel prank. Until I heard in a strange distorted voice, "Nick." I turned and ran. After that I ran until I found myself in the room the basement was supposed to have ended at. I took a moment to compose myself. All I had to do was go up those stairs, go down the third hall to the left until I was at room C28, and then I just had to get the photos taped under the desk. I had to remind myself of Lee. She had done it all without me, come back from the dead and learn to be human again. I would never be a man if I ran because a newsreel played my name. $15,000, enough to set us. To right my wrong and remove my guilt. I powered on. I thought I heard splashing from the story below me, but I ignored it. Then, as I made it to where the third hall should have been, there was more debris blocking the way, and the wall by it was spray painted in red. No way out. I turned and went to the second hallway. The map listed no other way through to the third hall, but this building was falling apart. My chances of finding a hole in a wall were high. Most of the rooms I looked in were empty. In B9 I heard what sounded like two men arguing. But when I opened the door there was nothing there. Just a notebook on an old desk. I flipped through it to calm myself. It was all pretty mundane stuff, except for the last entry, which appeared to have been written by someone else. "This is a warning, there is a reason why this place was abandoned. There's something in here. It feeds on your fear and worry. It turns your guilt into something you see right before your eyes. Don't become another person we have to cover up. If you're reading this, pray to whatever God you worship. It's not too late and get the hell out now." As I put the notebook down I heard a thump outside. I drew my gun and looked for a way out of the room. Then I heard a man speak. "Ma'am, you're awake?" Then I heard Lee, "Where's Nick?" "Where am I?" The doctor replied, "Ma'am, your boyfriend went to Canada to make money and keep you hooked up to life support." I heard Lee sob out, "What happened to me?" The tears openly flowed down my face as I kept myself quiet. This wasn't real. I waited, gun out, crying silently. After a few minutes I heard a hiss and padded footsteps lead back down the stairs. Lee had never told me what waking up from a 9-year coma was like, or what had happened. Whatever was out there had no way of knowing either, right? I kept checking the rooms until in B27 I found a hole that could fit me. I'm in C28 now, and the fucking photos this guy wanted are all blank film. I don't know what I'm going to do. Please send advice, or a SWAT team. I'm alive, thankfully. I think the entire town of Whittier is dead. After I frantically typed out my last post, I checked the wall materials. Thank you /the_master_of_suck, but these buildings' walls are solid concrete. I thought about hopping out the window, but the fall was too long. Even if I broke my legs silently I wouldn't be able to get away fast enough. I drew my gun and cautiously opened the door. Nothing was there in the hallway, so I crept out and walked to the hole that would lead me to B27. My luck ran out then. The thing that made this place its home saw me. It was large and pale, like a corpse that spent too long under the water. I shot it twice as it began reaching for me through the hole. My bullets made it stagger, but then it screamed in rage. I looked back long enough to see one of its blows crack the cement wall. I kicked the door to B26 open, and then as silently as I could I crept into B25. I heard the sounds of the wall breaking as I viewed my room. A dead body lay in the corner, dried blood all around it. It wasn't a body so much as it was just a skeleton with bits of meat hanging off of it. I saw a pack by it, and a quick glance revealed a can of red spray paint, the same color that had been used to write the warning downstairs. I went to check the window as it pounded the wall in anger. It had realized that I wasn't in the next room over. The floors, unlike the rest of the building, were wood. This wood by the window just happened to be rotten, and I fell through. I landed in a cushioned seat. I was in the theater. The screen flickered to life as I got up. Nick. Nick, Nick, Nick was the only thing the newsreel played, over and over. As I got up I heard footsteps from above. I quickly ducked down and rolled beneath seats. It dropped down, and the smell of it was too strange. Pine and mint, just how Lee always smelt. Then it used her voice again. As I heard Lee call for her I began to feel guilt and self-hatred like never before in my life. I hid as it patrolled the theater. Over and over Lee called for me. Every time bringing forth a fresh new wound. The woman who got into a car accident because I couldn't pick her up for our anniversary dinner. Her father, the self-centered shit he was, who I beat the fuck out of for going behind my back and trying to get her unplugged while in that coma. Me, who went to the north for greed, for an escape from the pain. It was almost like I could hear a second Lee. Not the mimic who called my name, like a little devil who whispers on your shoulder. Just come out, Nick. She'll never forgive you. You can't even forgive yourself. Then it left the theater, as if the mimic was satisfied I wasn't here. I got out from under the seats and raised my revolver. As I walked to the doors of the theater I felt uneasy. When I opened the door it pounced, but the mimic jumped too high, and flew straight over me. As I sprinted I did my best to secure my diving gear. It pursued after me with a ferocious cry. I noticed as I was running that the water was beginning to freeze over. The temperatures were dropping too fast for the water to stay solid. As I hooked up my tanks and made it back the office room I noticed I had 30 minutes of oxygen left. I slammed the door shut, praying the mimic would at least be slowed down by it. Then I put my mask on, checked that the film was secure and dove in. The water was beyond cold as I flicked my light on. I needed to hurry, it was so cold I felt like I was gonna go into shock. But as I swam back the way I came something was wrong. The hall I swam through was blocked off. Had the walls fallen down? I had put my map in my pack, so I couldn't get it out. I was about to risk going back when I heard splash. Something was in the waters of the flooded basement with me. I turned a hard left, down a corridor. As I looked on I saw bodies, at least 20. How had I not noticed before? I dodged the corpses and turned right down the next turn. I heard something and turned off my light. Sunlight was pouring from somewhere, and I saw the mimic swim past me and turn left. I waited, before I went back and checked where the light was coming through. It was a hole in the ceiling straight outside. I crawled out of it and shed my gear, cramming it back in my bag and removing my dive suit for my normal clothes. As I changed I still felt cold. In my rush to escape I hadn't secured everything properly. I was soaking wet. I ran through the woods as fast as I could. A storm was blowing in, and as I made it back to Whittier the snow was beginning to fall from the heavy clouds as the wind blew. Back in town, the bartender gave me a very strange look. He was on the phone with someone for a bit and then asked, "Didn't old Robbie send you down to Buckner Building?" I took a heavy swig of my drink and replied, "Does it matter?" The bartender was about to say something when Robbie walked in and pointed a gun straight at me. I jumped over the counter, tackling the barkeep and held my gun to his head. "Drop it and kick it away," I demanded coolly. He obeyed and let his pistol fall to the floor, then he kicked it and raised his hands. Before Robbie could say anything I asked, "Did you know what was in there?" Robbie looked down in shame and said yes. I pointed the gun at him and yelled, "Where's my damn money?" He looked up and said, "I'm not paying you for nothing, and neither of us is gonna live much longer." I kicked the barkeep down on his knees and drew the film canister from my pack. It was dry, and I hurled it at Robbie angrily. He cried out as it bounced against his head and I said, "You can pay me, or I can ransack your house after I shoot you." Robbie was a sensible man, and he gave me the money in old gold bars. I put it all in my van and drove away. The mimic had a way out, and was probably going to try and find me. Unfortunately I would be long gone by the time it reached town. After I was a mile ahead of the blizzard I called Leah and broke down like never before. I sobbed and told her I was so sorry for everything, then I told her about my money. We were gonna be okay. I had to pull off eventually, and kept driving after a night of sleep. When I made it to Anchorage I stopped to eat, and the news broadcast showed Whittier. Every resident was dead. Nick was written on every wall in their blood. I'm typing this up as I finish up booking a boat ride. It's lucky that the mimic will never find me.